In this video we are going to show you Geomagic DesignX Go. Geomagic have recently released 3 different versions of DesignX, so we now have Pro, Plus and Go. And why we're showing you Go in particular is because it's more equivalent to Creaform's scan-to-cad Pro, and we just want to show you the differences between the two more affordable options. So now we're going to launch DesignX Go, select import and bring in an STL file. If we choose the Smart Selection tool, we can then drag a selection over top of the bottom of the plate and then select insert, click and drag over the side, insert, and then select again, insert. So we're inserting region groups, and each of these colourful faces now are recognized as planes when we go to create planes. So I'm going to turn off the visibility of the front, top and right planes so we can just see what we're doing. We can then go to the model tool, click on the plane tool, and then just make sure our region filter is turned on, and you can see it recognizes that base plane, and we can select OK. Click on the next region, OK, and the next one, OK. If it's a little dark underneath, we can go to this display and just make sure all the lights are turned on, so it's a little bit brighter for us to see. Next, what I want to do is create a vector, and I'm going to use plane 3 and plane 2, and we can accept that, and then also a point. So I'm going to use the vector and the base plane to generate a point right on the corner. So we now have enough information to do an alignment. So we now go to the alignment tool, select interactive alignment, click on the next button, and it's going to be an XYZ alignment. So we can choose the position as the point, so that's the axis, origin. We want the y-axis as the plane. Sorry, the y-axis is the plane. No, I want the vector as the y-axis, and then the z-plane, we should be able to use plane 3. Yep. Cool. And that's how I want it now. Y up, X to the right, and Z pointing forward. Once we're happy with that, we can accept. And we can turn off the visibility of the plane. So what's quite nice in DesignX is that we can just left click and drag over the little eyes and they all turn off. So it's a fast way of just turning on and off planes. Just left click and drag. So the first thing I want to do is create a mesh surface. So if we go to a mesh fit surface, if we go to the model tab, we're in the right selection tool for the job. We're just going to select that area there, and we click on a tool called mesh fit. We can then orientate it a little bit better, so we can just drag that so it's a little bit more square, and it doesn't need to be so large. Okay, happy with that. Then you can just preview what the results look like. And that's not bad. It's fitting really well, but I want it to be a little bit larger. So we're just going to go undo, and we'll just bring it out a bit further like it was. Okay, it's not quite big enough yet, so we just got to keep adjusting. Okay, that should be large enough now because we needed to get past the corner of the block, and we can accept that now. If we go to the accuracy analyzer, we can then check the deviation from the body, and you can see it's very tightly fitting to the surface. Okay. So next, what we need to do is just turn off the visibility of that surface, and we're going to go to Sketch and select Mesh Sketch. The base plane will be the top plane, and that then starts the cross section, and we can then drag that up and through the object here, and then select OK. We can then rotate the view left, and now we can get straight into sketch tools. So what's nice is that I can just select this, these polylines, and it will just fit straight on top of that area, and then OK. Go to Smart Dimension and just add a couple of dimensions that we can then edit. Then we can just double click and go 120 by 160. Once we're happy with that, we can accept or exit the sketch. Go to the model tool, extrude. So now what we want to do is extrude, and we can extrude this up to the mesh fit surface. So we then choose up to surface and then choose that surface, and it will extrude and merge with it. Then we can turn off the visibility of the mesh fit surface. And again, we can do a deviation just to check and see how well it's fitting. So everything's looking really good. Okay, the next step is we want to create another mesh sketch. So we need to turn off the visibility of the solid. We need to select this plane here, and we need to go to region and insert another surface here. We can then go back to sketch, mesh sketch, and we can actually just straight away pick on that region as the starting point. So you don't have to create a plane every time. You can just use the region groups to get started. Accept that, and now we can sketch out over top of this mesh sketch. And of course you could turn off the visibility of the STL file if you want to just see that a little bit better. So there's a few more sketch tools inside of DesignX than Scan-to-cad Pro, just making it faster and easier to 3D model. And if I had been a bit more careful, we'll do that again, I could have touched that point and come down and just line that up, so I don't actually have to do any trimming. And then I could do a tangent arc between here and here, so it automatically adds a tangent constraint on that side. Drag that down and drag that one down. I could then select this arc and then double click holding shift on the next line, then I can make them tangent to one another. And then again I could add a dimension and make that like 45. Accept, and just make sure they still fit nicely. I can see that these aren't really locked on an axis, so I could say I want that to be vertical. I could click on the next line and I want that to be horizontal. So you can add those constraints in to ensure everything is square. Okay, once I have that sketch, we can turn back on our solid, go back into the modeling tools, extrude, and we're going to cut and take away from here and accept. Once we've extruded and cut away that surface, we can now turn the mesh back on, and we now need to create some additional regions. So we just go back into the home screen, make sure that the mesh is selected so that you get the select tools, Now we can just drag a selection over the top of the cylinder and insert another region. And you just keep going over the surface and keep adding those primitive region groups. And if we turn off the solid, we can also do these slots in here. Okay, so we might as well get these all done while we're here. Looks good. There's a plane there, so we might as well add that. And this should set us up to finish off the model. Okay. So now what we need to do is create some primitive objects. So we can go to the modeling tab, select solid primitive, and you just automatically extract that. So you just click on the sphere and you tell it what it will be. So it's going to be a sphere, next, and then accept. If you are doing a bunch of repetitive tasks, after you close the menu you can go Control then Space, and that reopens the tool, and you can also lock it so you don't have to keep closing it. So we can then click on the cylinder, make sure it says that it's going to be a cylinder, create, OK, and then just keep going. So we'll just keep creating a couple of cylinders, switch from cylinder to cone, we'll create that, switch from cone to sphere, and then create what we need to create. Okay. Then next what we need to do is just turn the visibility of the solids off for a moment, and we'll just create a bunch of reference planes. So make sure region filter is selected, and we'll just create and select each plane and just create separate planes we can use. Once we have those planes, we can now cut our solids. So we can go to cut. The tool entity will be, let's say, plane 12 to begin with, and the bodies will be the sphere and the cylinder. Go next, and you just choose what you want to keep as the remaining bodies. Then again, Control Space to get back into the same tool. Click on the plane, target bodies is going to be the cone and the sphere. Next, remaining bodies, the top of the sphere and the bottom of the cone. Okay, so that's all done now. We can turn off those planes that we don't need any longer. We can turn back on the main solid body, and we can turn off the visibility of the mesh. So now that we have these, we could do a Boolean operation and we can merge everything together. So I could just drag a window around everything and then accept. So we now have only one solid in the history. And just like Scan-to-CAD Pro, we do have a history of tasks that we've done, and you can always go back in time and right click on, for example, a sketch and edit that sketch and just make changes. So for example, if I right clicked on sketch 1 and went edit, I could then add some of these features already in here. So I could go circle, just double click on the circle, go to the slot tool and just drag a window over that slot, accept, accept. Okay. and by adding those in, it's automatically cut those away, which is quite helpful. So lastly, we just need to chop away a little bit more from the solid. So we're going to go and create another sketch, mesh sketch, base plane. You just would choose the region area, line tool, double click on these entities or this polyline. We're going to do another tangent arc. Make sure these two are tangent. We've got a resize button and we can just resize that out. Line tool, and then we have trim as well. Make sure it's a corner trim. And then we can just add a few dimensions, so we could add a radius there. So that should be 6 by the look of it. The angle between here and here, we could say that that is meant to be 51.5. And then we can accept that and escape out of the mesh sketch. Go back to the modeling tab, extrude, and if you make sure it says cut and accept, it would have cut that out of the solid. So it's happening in the background, even if you haven't got the visibility on still. Okay, turn off the solid, mesh sketch again, click on the plane to begin from, accept that. One kind of quite nice thing with DesignX is that you can turn back on an older sketch visibility. So if I just expand sketches, we just turn on mesh sketch 1. So we have a convert entities, so I could just click on the slot below and it then will convert that up onto the new sketch plane. And then by doing that, we could then offset from that original slot, which is probably a bit easier and better than scan-to-cad Pro. So then we'd choose offset, select that, and then we'll just shrink that down to like 6 or 5.5. Must be 5. Yep, to 5 millimeters. Okay. Then this sketch here, we can right click and just make that mark it as construction geometry, so it's not actually going to be extruded. So we then turn back on the solid, turn off sketch 1, make sure our latest sketch is turned on, model, tab, extrude, and just choose that sketch and cut. Okay, one more sketch and cut to do. So sketch, mesh sketch, make sure your mesh is turned on, select the plane, and you can grow and shrink the mesh sketch cross section, so you're only focusing on what you want to focus on. And we'll do this one a little bit faster, so that since we've already shown this, we won't worry about constraining it and dimensions. We'll just make it how it should be. So I really like DesignX's sketching tools. They're just very fast and easy to use. And then we can extrude that up and through the solid and cut away. Okay, so we've finished the main parts of the solid model. Next we can go and click on the fillet tool. We can then click on an edge, but what I really love about DesignX is that you've got this little button, estimate radius from the mesh, so it actually tries to work out what that radius should be. So it's close to 3 mils, so we'll say 3. 3 mil. And I don't have to close out of the menu to then be able to add more fillets. If I needed to do additional fillets at a different size, I can click and add a radius, and it creates a new set of fillets. So I could click on this edge and then estimate that radius, and that's more like 1. So then I can say 1 millimeter. That looks like it's meant to be 1, and then just cruise on through and keep adding in these filters, these fillets. So that edge there looks greater than 1, so I might come back to that. That looks like a 1 millimeter radius, 1 millimeter. That looks good, and that will probably be 1. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. That might be 1 millimeter, I'm not sure yet. So I could add another set, click on that, and then estimate that one. That's more like 1.5 it shows. And then we can add that in there. So I missed a few earlier, so I could go back and click on the 1 millimeter section and then just add to that. Okay, and if we wanted to, I don't know if these have a radius or not, but we'll put them in. We'll put it in there for fun. Okay, we'll leave the bottom sharp. So yeah, you can just add in multi-set fillets really easily, and we can accept that. And again, if we didn't quite get it right, we can go back to the history and right click and edit that fillet set. Now I'm going to add a chamfer, and we can estimate that again, and it looks like, yeah, it's meant to be 1, so we'll go accept. So here's the finished part all completed in DesignX Go. And again, we can check deviation from the actual STL file. And then once you're finished, like scan-to-cad Pro, Creaform scan-to-cad Pro, we can then do a live transfer to SolidWorks or any other major CAD system. And we can do this from the start of all the features, and it will launch SolidWorks for you, create a part file, and then start to rebuild this model with its history inside of SolidWorks.